Morning. 3 months ago, I made a video about how to propagate elderberry cuttings in a nursery bed, and I wanted to show you the results. Come join me in the cast. So like I was saying, 3 months ago, I showed how to dig a hole and create a nursery bed, and I'll put a picture in this. But basically, I just dug a hole, lined the sides with elderberry cuttings, and of course you can do it with any type of cutting. It doesn't have to be elderberry. If you want grape plants, or if you want currant plants, or pretty much any plant that readily roots. I mean, you can even do it with cassava if you wanted to. Pretty much any plant you can think of. I also did it with apple tree cuttings from my crab apple tree. So like if you have a rootstock that you love, and I'll show you that in just a moment, but this is the elderberry. So as you can see, they've pretty much all taken off. And you can tell once they start getting significant growth like this, it's a 100% chance that they have roots, because I mean yesterday it got up to like 85 degrees, and as you know, this stuff wouldn't survive unless it had decent roots, because the leaves would just wilt and fall off if there wasn't a way for them to replenish the water loss. So anyway, you can see that I don't know if it's 100% because I don't know how many I planted, but I mean I'm spotting probably 20 or 30 plants, and I don't even remember how many cuttings I put in here. I could probably look at the picture, because I know I have a picture somewhere on my phone. I'll probably stick that in this video. And I just lined these sides of this little hole. It was like a little trench hole, and I lined it with elderberry cuttings, just elderberry sticks. And basically the way it works is in the winter, when you trim your elderberries, I would recommend pruning them to the ground. If you have the type of variety I have, it's like a wild type, but it's very vigorous. And as you can see, I just kind of planted it right in the grass. And the reason why is I want it to have competition. And it's mostly because I wanted to prove that I have a variety that's very fast growing and very competitive. I'm the type of gardener, as you can guess by my name, chaos gardener. I like to grow things and let natural selection take over. So if I'm picking varieties, I'm gonna pick the varieties that aren't necessarily the best tasting, although I want them to be edible. But I'm willing to sacrifice like 5% of the flavor if that means it's 10 times more aggressively growing. If it competes 10 times better with the weeds, that's way more important to me than having the absolute best flavor. Of course, flavor is important to me. Like if I don't like it, I'm not gonna grow it. But I've never really eaten an apple that I didn't like. I know some people are like, you know, you plant this apple seed and the tree is gonna be gross. I've just never had that experience where I picked an apple from an apple tree. I mean, I've had a bad apple before, but I've never like, you know, we'll say I've never picked a whole bunch of apples from an apple tree and didn't like a single apple from that apple tree. So in my opinion, there's no such thing as bad apple genetics as far as fruit goes. Of course, you can have bad rootstocks. I mean, sometimes you'll try to plant an apple tree and the apple doesn't have genetics for competing against soil microbial life. And so the apple tree just has a terrible job at living. And that's usually when you'll, like if it produces fruit you like, but it's just not producing very much, you would just cut some of those branches off as scions, and then you would graft them into a really vigorous rootstock, which is kind of what I have over here. You can barely see them, but I pruned my apple trees, and I just put a bunch of random cuttings in the ground around here just to see what would happen. And they're leafing out already, so we'll see if they actually survive. If they can survive a winter out here, then I'll know that they're good rootstocks. If they don't survive, then I'll know that they're not. But those are just branches from a crab apple tree. But yeah, this elderberry is just, I'm really impressed with how much this thing's grown. Lots of little elderberry. And you can see some kale hiding in there. So I'm in zone 6 now. And funny enough, I took some seeds from these kale. And it says online that, you know, you can't plant kale in zone 6 until April or May or something. So I decided in January, I got a bunch of kale seeds and just kind of scattered them all over this area. And there's literally kale coming up everywhere. So apparently you can plant kale in January in zone 6. It just doesn't come up until it's ready, which is fine with me. Some people like get really paranoid about when they plant stuff. But it's fun because there are all these different sizes and varieties. So I got one of those mixes for microgreens. But I just got kale coming up everywhere. I'll do that in another video. The main point here is, if you want to grow lots of elderberry cuttings, if you want to grow lots of elderberry, and you're pruning your elderberry plant, say you only have one plant, take all those branches, cut it all the way to the ground, chop them up into, 5 or 6 inch sections, and just do what I showed you in the picture. And this will happen within a few months. So I hope that helps you to grow a whole bunch of elderberry. Thanks for joining me in the cast.